Welcome to Gigging, Everything in the Sharing Economy. In this podcast, we give you news, views, and predictions about the sharing, gig, and circular loop economies, which is expected to grow to $335 billion by 2025. So what is the future going to look like? According to Strategy Analytics and Intuit, in their report Accelerating the Future, the Impact of the Emerging Passenger Economy, autonomous driving technology will create a new passenger economy worth about $7 trillion by 2050. Now that new economy is going to be made up of three primary segments. A consumer mobility as a service segment, which is expected to be worth about $3.7 trillion, or about half of this new economy. And in this segment, consumers are going to continue to forego ownership of cars. So they'll have more self-directed personal mobility or driverless vehicles that are going to take them back and forth. In this segment of providing this as a service is going to range to about $3.7 billion. So think about that. Highways filled with driverless cars taking you everywhere you need to go, and that producing an economy around it that is half of what we expect to see out of this whole segment by 2050. Now, the second segment is business as a mobility service, and that's going to be worth about $3 trillion, or roughly the other half of this segment. And this is where you have industries like transportation, freight delivery, and sales, and service fleets will utilize these pilotless vehicles, and they will reshape the fundamentals of business. Truckers that you see parked on the side of the road or at truck stops because they've run out of hours for transporting goods and services in their goods in their truck. You won't see that in the future, as trucks will likely run 24 hours a day. They'll likely run full both ways because they'll be optimized to know when and where to make stops. And so you will get a more efficient economy because of those gaps that are currently there because of human use of transportation technology. So $3 trillion just from adding pilotless vehicles. Then you're going to get new emerging applications will account for about $203 billion in revenues. Now, a lot of these services haven't been thought of yet, but they're likely to affect industries like hotels. When you see it now, you get those vans that pick you up at the airport. That's likely to be taken over by pilotless vehicles. Hospitality, restaurants, dining, tourism, entertainment, all of these now where you're required to take a vehicle to or some mode of transportation are likely now to be replaced with pilot vehicles that are owned and operated by those institutions and organizations. Healthcare, you can see the benefit of having a pilotless vehicle. And all sorts of service delivery, which you do now have, but you don't have pilotless vehicles. So like Uber Eats and Deliveroo, places like that are likely to tap into that sort of technology. Now, some of the instant benefits that Intuit and Strategy Analytics predict from this new economy: 585,000 lives to be saved because you won't have people behind the wheel. Now, I'm waiting to see that happen because every other day in the news, there seems to be an accident with a pilotless vehicle on the road. Now, why is that happening? Probably because not all cars are pilotless and they aren't able to communicate with each other to avoid collisions. So where you have a mix of human and pilotless technology on the road, you're going to get accidents. But by 2050, they expect the majority of the vehicles to be pilotless and to save roughly half, 585,000 lives. The second big benefit is that it's going to free up more than 250 million hours of consumers commuting. Now, that means the vehicles that you will be transported in will allow you to work. I used to fly a lot, every week, almost 50 weeks out of the year. And one of the safe havens from work used to be the airplane, until they turned the airplane into an office by connecting Wi-Fi. These vehicles are likely to provide all of those services: a desk, a plug-in, charging, and Wi-Fi. So your time on the clock starts when you hit the vehicle, not when you hit your desk at work. 250 million hours or more productivity is likely to be literally squeezed out of you in your ride to work. How about the reduction in public safety costs related to traffic accidents? Intuit and Strategy Analytics predict $234 billion in savings associated with fewer traffic accidents. Interesting. So your world is going to be different because there will be pilotless vehicles, and you're going to see new services, changes in existing business services such as transportation and delivery, and changes in the current consumer services around mobility. And that's by 2050. So look how fast this economy is starting to grow, because the predictions by 2025 will be $335 billion in terms of the net impact, but we get to 3.7 trillion just some 25 years later. Impressive. If you aren't starting to think about this world as a gig world, you're going to get left behind. Now, speaking of that, what should you start looking at in terms of jobs and types of jobs if you want to get paid? Well, I'm going to tell you. There are more than 57 million freelancers currently in the U.S. And based on some research that I did for a client, one of my consulting clients at Sierra Consulting, by the way, half of all U.S. workers are going to be gig workers by 2030. So you need to know what types of jobs are going to get you paid. The U.S. workforce continues to see growth with an average of 2.6% each year. The country's freelancing growth is rapidly exceeding the employee growth at 8.1% per year. So you need to know the jobs to be focused on. You want to make $115 an hour? Start learning about deep learning jobs. Okay? You want to make $85 an hour? Blockchain. You want to make $78 an hour? Robotics. $66 an hour? Penetration testing. Yeah, breaking into people's systems. If you can test and learn how to prevent penetration attacks, $66 an hour. And these are the types of jobs that you would do for multiple companies. Bitcoin, we've all heard a lot about that. Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires. Well, if you know that technology, $65 an hour. Amazon Web Services, people are getting paid $50 an hour. Virtual reality, same as Amazon Web Services, $50 an hour. React.js, $40 an hour. Final Cut Pro, $30 an hour. And for you Instagram marketing geniuses, $30 an hour. So these are the skill sets that you see right now that are in demand in the gig economy, and there's a theme to all of them. There's the security of the data and the contracts and the relationships when you talk about blockchain and Bitcoin. There's the systems protections when you talk about penetration testing. There's the futuristic thinking of AI when you start talking about deep learning. And then, of course, there's the promotion of those products and services when we talk about Instagram marketing. If you want to be ahead of the curve, start looking into these types of skill sets now. So, this new world, we've said that you're going to have a brave new world with $3.7 trillion in new services around driverless cars, and it's going to rethink how you think about your job and how you move around your cities and your countries. But what's going to happen to you as you think about your personal finances and your credit scores? Well, some people think the world is going to look a lot like that show, what is it, Dark Mirror or Black Mirror, one of them, right? What's the world going to look like as you interact with people? Well, some folks think that you're going to be given a personal social score, like a credit score, for all your interactions, and that those social scores are going to determine a lot about what you're going to be able to do in the future. So in that episode, I think of Dark Mirrors, I think of the name of the show, the premise was that everybody you talked to gave you a score based on, a scale of 1 to 10. You said hello to the mailman. If he didn't like it, he rated you a 6, and that could drop you down on the social score level. Now, based on your average score, it would determine the rate of the loans that you would get, the type of jobs you were eligible for, and even where you could live. It seems absurd, but guess what? It's already happening in China. In China, Alipay and WeChat have built a transactional ecosystem that enables consumers to buy groceries, book appointments, pay for insurance. These giants know everything about their consumers. Last year, Alipay launched ZimaPay, and Zima Credit embodies everything that includes the personal credit that is connected to all of your business transactions. So the higher the score, the better your credit. The higher your Zima score, the better your social interactions are supposed to be. Well, the Chinese government is going to piggyback on that system. In 2014, the government announced that it was developing what it called a social credit. The social credit, says their state council, the Chinese government's governing cabinet, is publicly calling for the establishment of a nationwide tracking system to rate the reputation of individuals, businesses, and even government officials. The aim is for the Chinese citizen to be trailed by a file of compiling data from public and private sources by 2020, and that those files be searchable using their biometrics and other characteristics. This so-called credit system would cover the entire Chinese society. And the goal would be to nudge people towards the types of behavior that the government condones. So you have a huge carbon footprint, you may have a low social credit score. And it's supposed to then encourage you through both social interactions and government not prodding, eligibility for jobs and loans and places to live, for you to change that behavior to be in line with what the government wants. Well, sounds pretty authoritarian, right? Well, here's my thought on that. You put a system like this in place where every interaction is graded so that you then are pushed into behavior that's rewarded by business and government in terms of your economic and social viability. It won't take but 2 generations before you don't need God. I mean, think about it. God today, for many in a social construct kind of way, keeps tab on all of the things that I just described. and gives you a thumbs up or thumbs down on whether or not you're going to make it into heaven or hell. And that social construct guides society and kind of binds it together because people know there's someone watching. Just bring it a little closer to home for the kids. Santa Claus has a list. He's checking off who's naughty and nice and deciding who's going to get the best Christmas presents. That system, Santa Claus, helps to govern behavior. You put a system like this in place with social credits, you don't need either of those because this system takes over and becomes a ubiquitous construct that determines who's naughty and nice and rewards or punishes in real time. You're going to eliminate God with these social credits. Interesting new world that we're going to be going into. Well, if you're going into a world like that, you're getting older, there's going to be one good benefit. The sharing economy is going to help you get some services, even if those bratty kids you raised don't want to come and see you. There's a new startup called Helper, HELPPER, and they just raised $1 million to use the sharing economy to provide services to the elderly. You gotta love that, right? This Belgian company just taking that $1 million and they're using it to roll out their service that provides a app platform that will send out a request for anyone that provides services to the elderly when they don't have anyone to help them. So if they need someone to pick up their medicine, take them to the grocery store, drop them off at the doctor's office, all these things can be provided through the use of their sharing platform. The founder started the company because of his own personal situation. His father had been diagnosed with ALS, and he, being far away from his father, needed someone to help him perform some of the daily tasks like shopping and driving to appointments. So the platform that he built encourages a continuous relationship between the users and these one-off tasks. The Helper platform takes a cut of each of the transactions, as most of these sharing applications do, the sharing economy applications. Users only need to pay a $10 registration, and they get paid $9.80 per hour to provide these services to the elderly. Wow. Sharing economy to the rescue. And that's one of those great benefits. You know, we're in a new age. We left the old age back in 2012, and in this new age, we're supposed to be moving into a more maternal, sharing age. And this is a good example of that. This is one of those examples where we're using technology and our infrastructure to care for each other. And I'm pretty excited about that. Speaking of living, what are these gig workers going to do when they go to buy a house? Full-time workers get a salary and get benefits, and those salaries are predictable, which allow for financial organizations to give them mortgages and give them credit. Now, we talked about the social credits and transactional credits that are coming that are going to support this gig economy, and that's being spearheaded by the Chinese government. But how are you going to translate that into a FICO score to get a house? Well, I've predicted in the past that gig workers won't buy houses like the baby boomers. That gig workers are going to buy homes the way they search for jobs. They may want to own a bedroom and share the public spaces in a house. So turning a residential home into an apartment complex of sorts, because they will own their living quarters and share the public space with the rest of the tenants in the house, rest of the owners in the house. And then they may use blockchain to help them execute transactions where other gig workers can utilize their bedrooms for rent when they travel to jobs outside of their city or their country. That's what I think the world's going to look like. You'll own a space, not a house. You'll pay for your use of the public space within that house, and then you'll share your bed space when you're not using it for gig workers who may work different shifts, or when you travel to work jobs where you have specialized services that require you to leave the area where you reside. Well, guess what? My predictions are coming true. Cohab, an Australian-based startup, is now allowing people to co-own homes in Australia. So these entrepreneurs were thinking outside the box, and they wanted to help these gig worker first homeowners to jump into the property market in ways that would help them solve the housing affordability problem. San Francisco, New Orleans, LA, New York, prices are being driven through the roof, in some cases because of the sharing economy. Yes, the sharing economy. Airbnb in many cities where tourists travel have pushed property prices up, even in exclusive neighborhoods, because folks are buying up these properties and putting them on Airbnb so folks can have unique stays in places where they want to visit. So gig workers who don't have predictable future incomes are having a hard time buying houses in places where they work or want to live. So Cohab's going to help gig workers team up to buy fractional ownership in a house. So how does Cohab work? Well, they're just like Tinder of sorts. You swipe to the left or to the right when you see profiles of gig workers that you think you can work with when you get to want to buy a house. You have no other relationship with them other than the profile that they have on the platform, and you can team up with them to build equity, fractional ownership in a property. So Cohab, in their online marketplace, matches people with other buyers who want to co-own property, either to live in or rent out as an investment. Users of the platform have used it as a step ladder when they rented out the property to give them equity to buy their first home in cities where prices are through the roof. Am I a genius or what? I keep telling myself that. The future is an exciting place for those who are studying the trends and putting themselves in places to win. And this is an exciting one. So people who don't have tons of money, you're not going to get locked out of building equity. Get on Cohab now. Learn what they're doing and start executing that in markets today, here in the U.S. Last story. This happened back in 2017, but I thought it was good to talk about in the first episode of Gigging. IKEA buying TaskRabbit. I wanted to talk about that primarily because it shows that the empire is striking back. Traditional offline companies are starting to get it. They're saying, we need to have a foothold in the sharing economy, and so we're going to buy some of the biggest players and integrate them into our business model. The IKEA purchase is perfect. Who can put together those things that they sell? I'm still working on a cabinet from 2009. But I could get someone off TaskRabbit to come over and put it together for me. In fact, I could get someone from TaskRabbit to pick it up, bring it over, put it together, and then finally this cabinet will be in my house working the way I want it. I think other companies are going to follow that same path because the trends are going to demand that they do it. Like, I think McDonald's is going to stop building stores and start buying companies like Deliveroo, because more and more people are having their food delivered to them as opposed to dining in at their brick and mortar facilities. You want to push that a little further? I think McDonald's is going to disappear altogether. Why do I think that? Cloud-based kitchens. Yeah. You see the episode of the X-Files where the AI robots were running the entire sushi restaurant? What if that restaurant were capable of preparing any type of food just based on the recipes that were downloaded into the server? You wanted a Whopper? Why couldn't those AI robots prepare that? You wanted a Big Mac? Same thing. So what's going to become important in the future is not necessarily the infrastructure, but the recipes themselves. Don't believe it? Call Coca-Cola and ask them what the value of their business is built on. A formula, which they keep pretty secret and locked up at SunTrust Bank. All right? So if you have that formula, you're going to get paid every time it's accessed or requested through the cloud to be produced in one of these cloud-based kitchens and delivered to you by an autonomous car. Take it one more step, and your autonomous kitchen will just prepare it for you. Yes, they do have those now. Robot kitchens that can prepare recipes that are downloaded into them at chef quality levels. We'll talk about that in the next episode. The future's bright or scary, depending on the way you look at it. But you'll always get my perspective here at Gigging, Everything in the Shared Economy.